Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for connecting. My name is Petar. I am the production director here at Connectiva. I will be moderating this webinar, and so if you have any questions, feel free to ask me or write in the chat. While I will be setting some ground rules, we will check some audio and video. So if we have some issues, please feel free to write it in the chat so that we know that everything works and everything is good. Now, for those of you that don't know, this webinar series is part of our Banking CEE network, which is the association of banking executives and experts in the CEE region that we're building here. So for those of you that are interested in learning more about the association and activities and how to get to become a member, please feel free to go to our website, which is www.connectiva-cee.com. This is a sponsored event. The event is sponsored by Creatio. They provide the next-gen no-code tools for solving the tasks of your business. And to learn more about their products, feel free to also visit their website, www.creatio.com. This is a live event, obviously, so I do encourage you all to use the chat box and ask the questions to our speakers who will be presenting in a few moments. So just write your questions in the chat, as I mentioned, and I will address them to the speaker. And the recordings of this event will be available on our website to all our registered members of the community. And this week, we will try to upload them by the end of this week. So for those of you that are registered but not able to stay for the entire webinar, you can rewatch this event later on. Okay. So this is it from my side. Let me introduce our first speaker, which is Daniela Vukoslavovic. She is the Retail Division Deputy Director at Erste Bank Montenegro. And she's also the advisory board of the Banking CEE network. And she will be presenting the presentation. The title is BPM, Business Process Management and Automation in Banking Processes as a Lane to Premium UX. Hi, Daniela. Nice to see you again. Please just give us a small introduction from you so that people know you a little bit better. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for these nice words. Regards to everyone, to all of our participants today from sunny Montenegro. I'm very happy to be today with all of us and maybe to try to give a very modest contribution toward few definitions and terms which are important when we are talking about automation. And just before that, quickly, I'm Retail Division Deputy Director in Erste Bank Montenegro, and I'm more than 20 years in banking industry on different positions, digital channels and in retail. And as of last year, I have I would say, very interesting and challenging and productive cooperation with the Connectiva and all things that Connectiva is actually doing in terms of supporting model of banking business in these days where we have really lots of changes and challenges in this industry. So at the beginning, I would like, of course, to encourage all our participants to ask and to send questions. I will try to be concrete with my presentation and to leave enough time for all of you maybe to challenge some of the things that I will mention. And of course, later we will have a panel discussion, and it will be as well an opportunity for all of us maybe to exchange some of the ideas and some experiences and some use cases. Croatia is definitely someone who can give lots of concrete examples and lots of cases from their experience and from their product portfolio in order to support concretely these things that we will mention. Let's say that when we open this topic as something which is interesting for banking community, I suggested maybe to give a short introduction approach to this topic, because terms of which are, for example, like BPM or RPA or DMS are something which is very popular nowadays in banking industry. But I would like that to say that maybe before we apply some kind of banking robots, we should be ready with our processes, and we should understand our processes, and it would be very good to succeed to manage our processes actively. So as you see, I will speak about BPM and automation, but from the perspective of some premium user experience. So whenever we speak about this, we always have a client as someone who will be at the end of the story, someone who will test and confirm that we were on the right path. And concerning the processes, one thing which I like always to mention whenever there is an opportunity to improve is to change, and to be perfect is to change often. So don't be afraid to challenge your processes and to improve them. BPM or business process management is one discipline which is not connected just with banks. It's something which is very much developed in all kinds of industries and organizations, and it means that you have a methodology and you have exact procedures and governance model in order to govern your processes. And usually it means several things that you are doing. Here I categorize them in maybe 5 steps. It's sometimes can be 7, but it's always, I mean, the same structure. So you must discover your processes. That means recognize what is the process within the organizational unit. Then you must model your processes, analyze and measure, improve and optimize. And of course, at the end, when you perform all these 3 steps, then your process is ready for automation. It's not good if you start to automate your processes before they are ready and before you somehow put them through all these phases. In business process management, you must have a kind of methodology which will help you to model, execute, monitor, and optimize your processes. And when you make a definition of BPM priorities, because we will never be able to deal with all of your processes, you must make some prioritization. And later in the presentation, you will see some concrete examples which processes are good to start automation or RPA processes in the bank with them. Definition of BPM priorities must include several things. Must include, of course, in the first place, business strategy of the bank. Then must include income generated through that process, number of FTEs involved, and user experience. And when you're in position somehow to measure these few things, then you will be able to structure your processes in the map of processes that we will see later. And it will be easier for you to decide which processes are good for any kind of digitalization or automation. So the main goal of the BPM is to set or make precise minimum quality standards in the area of BPM, to have basic rules and procedures which will be applied. And of course, you must have some tools in order to measure processes. It must be some BPM tool in order to see or to know how your processes are good or how much they are not perfect, let's say. It's maybe interesting just to say what is actually process. When we say process in the bank, usually the first thought is that something which is complex, which lasts for days, lots of people involved in. But that's the story with some kind of complex processes. We have a great number in every organization of these series of repeatable steps and tasks, which maybe we do not recognize as a process, but it actually is a process. If one of your employees prepare each morning a simple report of disbursed loans, then it's a process for him. And we have simple processes, short-term processes, complex processes, ongoing processes, and maybe some function-specific processes which can happen. For example, like I put here, when you make a certain management proposal or board proposal. This is one example from our group. So we tried to categorize our processes in three core streamlines, in three core group of processes. So we have management processes, core business processes, and support processes. In management processes, you have here different things like budgeting and controlling, risk management, asset liabilities management, product management, etc. In core business processes, since we are a bank, you will of course find everything that is connected with our products, with lending, with payment services, with asset and financial management services. And in support processes, you have a huge number, always a huge number of different kinds of processes like procurement or accounting or project management or legal processes. And when you prepare this kind of map, then it's easier for you to decide which areas are critical and actually to measure the importance through those several segments or factors that I mentioned. Here are some interesting facts about robotic process automation and what analysis and prediction says. This is something that I listened in my bank a few years ago, and it was really interesting to see that RPA will affect 30 to 40% of all processes. That expected cost reduction will be up to 65% for internal operations and up to 30% for external operations. That RPI will shorten operational processes by 30 to 35%, and which is very interesting, and it was McKinsey's report that 85% or of all typical organizational processes can be automated. This is one of the very recent research in the EU, and it was interesting for me to put it here to share with you how industries have adopted or embraced automation. Apart from technology and IT industry, which is reasonable to have a very high adoption rate, banking and financial services are as good. And it's very interesting to see this, that actually RPA is something which is already deeply rooted in the banking business. On this slide, as I said earlier, I tried to categorize kind of methodology that we have when we actually selected which processes to be a candidate for RPA. I must say that we are not, I mean, in my organization, some kind of great experts. We are classical brick and mortar bank, which is actually a retail bank on Montenegrin market, which is still in some regulations maybe lag behind the EU. But we had very successful, several of them, very successful examples of RPA, where our employees were very much delighted to see the outcome in terms of better processes and saving of their time from some maybe more complex things or some things which are more interesting for them. So actually what we measured and how we actually categorize processes. We looked two categories. One was strategy importance, and the other was value of that process. So on the side of the strategy, we looked at strategy importance, complexity of the process, impact on other group members, direct impact on customer experience, and what was actually the last improvement date of that process. And after that, we looked at volume of that process, so number of transactions or number of FTEs involved. What is improvement goal? What is urgency? Or is it something which is needed or must be done? And what is regulatory requirement? Is there any legal compliance which forced us to do that? And here we'll see some of these processes in terms of reporting, where actually the first processes that we candidated and successfully did automation on them. But there are different actually areas where you can apply it. Disbursed loans, regulatory package reports, different reports on early maturation loans. That's something that we did as well. Then some AML or KYC controls. Campaign management is very, very interesting area, which can support you much in the loyalty programs and can be automated. Pricing calculations, credit scoring models, collection, invoice management. And just as a parallel from our experience, we decided to connect, although it's not the same, but it goes together very well from our perspective, RPA and DMS, document management system. So some processes like drafting loan contracts, core banking system roles catalog, for example, complicated procedures in the back offices concerned with salaries and pensions, crediting of current accounts was something that we put on DMS and, of course, in some segment applied RPA. And as a result, we succeeded with several examples that I mentioned to change our business model and to accelerate digital transformation and to prepare or to make controls on different levels and to prepare our model for larger scalability. And of course, at the end, a final benefit is always operational excellence and customer experience. I would just here mention one fact which is not on the slide, but according to Gartner, just 30% of all the investments into digital transformation, just 30%, which means less than each third investment, gives concrete contribution to operational excellence, which means that when you decide to digitize something or to automate something, be careful and think in advance what concrete benefits you will have from that. There are different solutions and different possibilities on the market, of course, these days, but you must strongly connect your initiatives with your strategy in order to reach a great user experience and in order to reach operational excellence. So RPA has appliance on all the aspects, so in all the organizational structures of the bank. And here you can see that it can be within the lending processes or in regulatory and compliance. For example, banking automation helps devise customized and reliable workflows to satisfy regulatory needs and to monitor, for example, some measures and recommendations that you have from compliance department, as well in the field of information security, human resources, and client service. But as I said, just be careful how you connect your initiatives and your investments with your strategy, with your clients, and with your market. It's another part of the story, but always interesting. When you make these kind of decisions, you must look at some data that you have within your organization. And at the end, something which comes as kind of a conclusion, processes are actually in the center of the quality of user experience. Because of that, I put a headline of this today, my part of the webinar, that is actually aligned to our premium user experience. So if you're doing with performance and measure your performance, if you have a commitment, which means competitive awareness and shared goals, transparent and measurable. Of course, if you empower your employees to have a direct influence on the goals that you made them, if you have a clear and applicable strategy, and if you're dealing with your processes, definitely, it will make you, it will give you, let's say, a good line towards quality of user experience. Don't suffocate your people with processes. It's something which would be as a conclusion. Don't suffocate your employees with processes, because if you suffocate your employees, probably you will suffocate your clients as well. And it's something which is characteristic for all the banks, because classical or all the brick and mortar banks are actually sometimes very bureaucratic, and it's always complicated for us to be ready to be comfortable with change and to improve constantly. But I think that we are on a good way to stay, let's say, as an incumbent, major stakeholder in the financial sector. So just to look at time, maybe I am not so bad. And if we now have, I don't see it on the screen, but if Peter has ready some questions, we can continue, or maybe continue with the next panelist, or if there are some interesting conversation, we can go on with that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Daniela. We don't have any questions so far from chats, but I have a few from my own. So, you know, we are now also going through some kind of process automation. It's not as, I would say, as advanced maybe in the banks or some, but we are starting from a little bit smaller processes. But I'm curious, because I like the phrase that you used, don't suffocate your employees because you will suffocate your customers, which is, I think, is a very good phrase that that kind of views some of the challenges with the automation, right? Because it's important not to over automate and make the process even more challenging, right, than before, because depending on the employees, we also have to account for the employees as well, right? Not everyone is able to kind of get the grasp of everything at very easily, right? Not everyone is technically savvy. So how does one find a balance? What would be the criteria to find the balance in not to over automate processes, not to make them even more difficult?
I'll try to make a short and simple answer. First, when we talk about clients, we always say that our decisions must be data driven. It's the same philosophy with your processes. You cannot deal with processes or even try to do any kind of automation or DMS process if you didn't measure anything. So that's one of the first slides. You must start with your processes from the beginning. So first things first, you must recognize your processes, you must measure them. And then, of course, in concerning the very project, when you start the project, that's something that our experience showed. It's very crucial to include people from all the channels, from all the phases of the process. For example, usually in our project management teams, we always include someone from the network, from the branches, from the corporate, from the retail, in order because they are knowing that process as someone who is using that as a product. From the perspective of BPM, our employees are our clients. So it's very important to include your client, to include your employees, and to make 1 degree of awareness within the organization. What is the process? And what is relation between the process and operational excellence, between process and some indexes, which is called, for example, cost-income ratio, which is very popular in the banks. So when you succeed to connect processes and your cost-income ratio, then you easier make a decision where to invest. But you need to be ready for that.
And what would be how does one approach the stakeholders with this request? I'm just curious, and because as you mentioned, banking is quite an old industry, I would say, and finance especially. So how do you approach your stakeholders or employees with the request of automating processes? What would be the tips for you that you would do?
I will tell you the real story. I mean, when we mentioned the first time in our bank 2 years ago, when we mentioned robots, everyone was a little bit scary. I mean, robots in our banks in Montenegro, I mean, it's something which is like a fairy tale. And then we tried to work with a very narrow group of people on one very simple process. It's something that I mentioned, it's preparing of reports. So every day, 2 of my employees are preparing reports for me and for my network concerning the disbursed loan, early maturated loan, pensioners loan, consumer loans. So what happened the day before in our branches? And it always took half an hour or maybe 45 minutes. And when we succeeded to automate that kind of process, now each morning I receive, and all of us receive, one mail which is called Eva Robot. And it's our small first robot in the bank. We give it the name Eva. And people from that very simple, very simple example, that's the reason why I said to just be clever and careful when you choose the process. Don't go to complex processes on first, because you probably won't be ready for that. Go with small processes and include people from the organization who have awareness of what the process is and when you can optimize. And maybe something which Mike can later explain in more details. It's not that you can automate each process before you optimize that. You cannot automate processes which are not optimized. So you must have a culture within an organization to deal every day with your processes. Like you speak about your clients, the same thing is with the processes. So speak about your processes on each level.
Perfect. And we have one question from the chat. How do we ensure that employees do not forget on the defined processes after automation?
Well, usually some things happen when you set up the process, when you optimize that or maybe automate that or put that on DMS. It's not a finished story. It's a cycle. As I said, even if you automate that, you will need to monitor, and then after some time, maybe to reinvent, to change. That's the reason why I put that saying of Mr. Chancho, to improve is to change often is perfectness. So change often, monitor your processes. And I must say that particularly in these times, the banking industry is hit every day with different regulations, with different consumer law protections, with fintechs which set up standards which are now a standard of the industry actually. You must look at your processes more than ever. And you cannot implement something before someone in your organization who is very skillful in processes, the whole system actually says, yes, this is okay from the perspective of our employees and from the perspective of our clients, it will not destroy our customer experience or our employees' experience. So you must monitor that every day.
Great. Thank you very much, Daniela, for the presentation. If anyone is interested in to learn more about Daniela's presentation, you're more than welcome to write her on LinkedIn. So thank you again, Daniela. We will see you later in the panel discussion. Okay, so we are moving. We are moving to the next presentation, which is called "Freedom to Own Your Automation in the Banking Industry." The presentation is, the speaker is Mike Vichenko. He's the VP of Sales Central Europe at Croatia. Mike, welcome. Nice to see you. Thank you for connecting. Please just introduce yourself briefly before you start presenting. The stage is yours.
Hi, Peter. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here today and happy to be a part of this discussion, right? We are going to continue this conversation about automation, and thank you, Daniela, for setting up the stage here. I will share my screen in a moment. Yeah, please let me know and confirm that you can see it.
Yes, everything is good.
Okay, wonderful. Right. So I'm going to talk about owning your automation. I've been working in tech for more than 10 years, and during all this time, I've been involved into large digital transformation projects and initiatives with different sorts of organizations, right? But of course, now we're going to talk about banks and how it actually works. But before that, I just wanted to give a quick kind of intro and a background, right? When we are talking about automation, we usually mean digital workflows, which disrupt any industry, right? They have become an indispensable part of our day-to-day life, right? We are doing our purchases online, we are booking hotels, we are managing our finance, and on, right? So we are so used to it. And currently, digital processes are very interesting for large organizations because they know that the end users, they give all their love and loyalty to those companies who can provide them with the best experience in this area, right? Because digital workflows are very personalized, they're very tailored to some specific needs of the customers. At the same time, they're very kind of convenient, paperless, right? And again, organizations, they want to adopt them and they want to move that direction of automation on the regular basis. But then they face this challenge, right? If you take a look at the slide, you will see that the worldwide demand for applications is actually more than 500 million, while on another hand, we have only 25 million of developers available, which is certainly not enough to cover that demand. So the bandwidth is just not there. But then on another hand, we have a resource which we have hardly tapped into. It's 1.7 billion of knowledge workers. Knowledge workers are people like probably you and other within this audience who are very well familiar with how processes work, but they lack technical expertise to actually automate them or, maybe, create an application with their own hands. So what if we provided with these people with the right tool or the right platform so that they can bring their automation ideas in live and by this own their automation? We will discuss this in a moment, but before that, I also want to move on and talk more specifically about the challenges which banks are facing these days when we are talking about technology, right? And there are quite few of them, but generally they are related to the increasing competition, growing customer demand, and digital disruption, right? So we try to boil this down into 4 key factors, which I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on. And I want to start with neobanks, right? So neobanks are coming, they are pressuring the more traditional banks. As you can see, in the span of the last 3 years, the number of such organizations and financial startups has grown from just 2,000 to 5,000, right? More than double. And the number continues to grow, right? And they are acquiring more people, they acquire like customers and the market share, right? So this year, 2023, the number of people who are using their services will reach 85 million, which is almost 20% of the population of EU in the age over 14, and so on and so forth. So just, in a nutshell, it is clear that this is a serious competition factor which cannot be ignored by traditional banks, right? Then comes the customer loyalty, which is more volatile these days, right? So customers, they have high expectation, especially if we are talking about technology. They would expect the same level of services provided by their bank that they are getting somewhere else. And I don't know, in Spotify or Netflix or Facebook, whatever they use in other, digital landscape, right? We see that according to the recent studies, 50% of customers, they don't believe that they're getting personalized enough approach from their bank. And again, 40% they think that they're not getting the proper set of services or products from their bank, right? Obviously, there is a portion of customers which are not completely satisfied, and they can easily churn or move to another provider, another bank, in the first 90 days, they're not happy with the level of service. The third factor, when we are thinking about our customers, we should not forget about our employees, right? This is very important because our employees are facing our customers, and these factors are tightly connected between each other, right? So again, according to the study, we see that regular banking employee has to use a lot of different applications throughout their regular working day, right? The statistics says from 9 to 11, and this number has grown. I've seen a lot of customers where a regular, a person in branch has to use more than 15 different applications, and it takes them more than an hour throughout the day just to switch between them, obtain the data and, manipulate, do different things within these applications. Obviously, that does not contribute to the productivity, and then that keeps those employees unsatisfied. And that's definitely an area for improvement when we are talking about digital transformation initiatives within the bank. And then the fourth one is that the management lacks visibility, right? Not only because they don't have the respective dashboard, but sometimes they cannot trust the data, or sometimes we cannot obtain the necessary data to build the reports that management expects to see, right? So there's a problem with data accuracy, which affects the decision making. And then again, a lot of organizations that recognize that with the quality of data, they cannot be just sure that the reports that they are providing are accurate enough. And that's, again, another issue. All of that, of course, sounds concerning, right? But I don't want to exaggerate, because there is a way out. And we actually, while building our solution here at Creatio, we were thinking about these issues and thinking about the ways to provide the solution to the market and the organizations which are struggling with this, right? And we came up to the solution which consists of these two components: no-code approach and one platform. I'm going to elaborate on each of them a little bit more right now, but I want to start with the no-code, right? When we say no-code, let's take a look what was available on the market before the no-code, right? There were just two potential options. So the banks could go with packaged applications, which are tailored to resolve a very specific task or, a specific area. And they were good in it, but they were not flexible at all, right? So if you want to change something, or if you want to adopt the solution to your business, not vice versa, this is where you would encounter things like a real problems, right? Which would not allow you to be successful with that. And then there is a completely opposite thing, which is customer development. In this case, you can be very tailored to cover your specific and sophisticated needs or requirements, but at the same time, it's not scalable, not too consistent, and there are a lot of different drawbacks that organizations are facing with custom development and further legacy. This is why this no-code concept is there to kind of resolve all of this issue and combine the best out of two words of custom development and packaged application, while discarding the drawbacks of them, right? So it can be very tailored, right, because of the flexibility, but at the same time, it can be very quick to deliver, time to market, right? Because the pre-built applications are already there, right? And again, it's a totally different technology where not only the developers, but also the end users, those knowledge workers, 1.7 billion of those people whom I showed at the beginning of the presentation, can really contribute and create the applications that they will be using afterwards. Right, so let's take the key principles of no-code just to understand how it can contribute and how it can let the organizations to benefit out of this technology. The first one is use no-code to gather requirements and prototype on the fly. This is what Daniela mentioned, right, in her presentation, saying that you have to kind of build those processes before you go with the automation. But I've seen so many situations where organizations are simply don't have this. Either they're not mature enough, or they simply have the processes running in real life, but when we ask to put this on paper, well, it might be a bit of a struggle for them, right? Like in this case, you have an environment where you can prototype, right? You can say, okay, I know how it works. For example, a business person thinks, I know how it works, but I have issues with putting this on paper. In this case, you can use this interface to kind of build the process or the workflow from the blocks using the composable things that are available on the platform, and then automate it on the fly and see how it works, or if not, then reiterate and improve. The second principle is everything that can be delivered with no code should be delivered with no code, right? Because that's real easy, that's cost effective, it's real fast, right? I'm not saying that no code, it fits for everything, not at all, but there are a lot of things that can be developed fast and automated fast and impact the business significantly. And the third is deliver to end users as fast as possible. As simple as that, right? So we can deliver fast, we can get the feedback, reiterate, and continue that cycle of continuous improvement. Here are the no-code benefits for the business in a nutshell. So faster to start, meaning that you don't need to wait for the allocation of IT resources. Ramp up teams, build them together, train them, and so on and so forth, right? You can start with the citizen developers, with knowledge workers, with the support of IT, and in that powerful combination, you can start automating the processes. And don't try to boil the ocean overnight. Just try to go with something that can contribute fast and be a quick win for the entire organization. You can do that with a no-code. Second one is you finish faster, right? Obviously. So that means that with a no-code, the technology actually grants you the capabilities to build something out of the pre-configured blocks, and that allows to deliver things into production much faster. That actually leads us to the third benefit, which is improved alignment through the collaboration of business and IT resources, right? And that, of course, increases the agility because of the speed of delivery to production and speed of automation of processes. You can respond much faster to the demands of the market. And we know that the market is very dynamic here, taking into account the competition, changing regulations from the governments, and I don't know, such things as pandemic or something else, which affects the business and requires quick responses. I have actually a good example, which I will be sharing with you just in a moment, but that's in a nutshell how the organization can benefit from the no-code. All right, so the future of personalized experience in our vision is a combination of hyper-intelligence and hyper-automation. When we're talking about hyper-intelligence, we mean that we can build a truly 360-degree view because of the seamless data flow within all of those applications that can be built on the platform, removing the silos and making the data accessible to different users with different profiles. On-time engagement meaning being relevant to your customers, right? With all those insights that we collect from the data through these, through analyzing these profiles, right? And you can always be, very tailored in your communication. AI-powered decision, again, based on the data collected and analyzed, the machine learning models, the system can advise the relationship managers how to proceed with the customer, or where to focus their efforts to get the maximum outcome, right? And then hyper-automation, seamless and digital workflows. This is something that we can build on that single platform using the no-code technology. Unified access to data, again, because everything is not clustered, is available to all the users, and no-code developers, which can deliver things real quickly. And these people, they have business knowledge and business background, and they work closely with IT to maximize the outcome. All right, so since we have uncovered a little bit the no-code part, I want to quickly talk about a one platform concept for banks, right? Here we are talking about the platform, the no-code platform, right? And on top of that, we have built a vertical solution which feeds very specific requirements of financial industry and banks particularly, right? And we are talking about, bringing together the best practices from different banks, from different, countries, and using this to build a solution that can contribute and help to go live faster, but then allowed to customize it to some sophisticated requirements of particular organization, right? So here we have retail banking module, corporate banking, lending both for corporate and retail, marketing automation for omnichannel, communication with your customers, and then workflow automation for internal processes and, like KYC or administrative process and so on. So this is how the banking workflow map looks in Creatio. It all starts with marketing and omnichannel communication, where you start engagement with your customers. Then you hand it over to your sales teams, right? And I'm talking retail and corporate relationship managers here, of course. Then comes the front office, the branch processes automation, lending for both corporate and retail, which of course is very different, but still kind of falls under a single item here. Underwriting and verification, customer experience and customer service to make sure you drive retention and upsales to your customers, compliance module, and then administrative services and internal processes automation. So the strategic business outcomes of this single platform are quite obvious, right? And they affect the key areas which are important for the business. We are talking customer experience here for new customers acquisition, retention, driving up sales and cross sales to your existing customer, right? Because we provide your people with the right tools, and that comes to the next kind of outcome and takeaway, which is operational excellence, right? Meaning that your people have a high level of adoption. Not only that allows them to be more productive, but also that kind of helps the entire organization to benefit out of it, because they are using the solution, and they're doing this because they contributed to the creation of it, right? When we say own your automation, that relates to every person. Of course, I'm not saying that your tellers or relationship managers will be creating this application with their own hands. They can, of course, if they want, and you can provide them with such opportunity, but normally it is done by so-called power users or citizen developers who come out of this environment and who have access to these people and their feedback, but then they aggregate it, and in collaboration with IT, they create something that will be adopted and used very intensively by the people, by the organization. And then, of course, time to market, right? Because of the flexibility, you are able to respond to the challenges which are coming from the outside, the market or the regulators, but at the same time, you can deliver your digital initiatives, projects, applications to production much faster with the proper technology, which is no-code platform, which we are talking about. All right, so how does it work, right? Okay, I've spoken a lot about the concept, about the theoretical part, but again, it always works like both ways. And I have a lot of examples, but here's the favorite one, which I really love. This is one of the European banks, and during pandemic, the regulator allowed to go ahead with online loans, right? Before that, there was no like online loans on the country level. So a customer of ours who have embraced the no-code concept and used it heavily for internal process automation was able to release a solution to the market in just around 2 weeks. But the most beautiful part about that is that for the next 3 months, there were no competition who was able to achieve the same results. So they've been dominating the market for 3 months in a row without any competition behind their back. And only after 3 months, they started to appear with their own solution. So that actually represents it, in a nutshell, how no-code can help you to get the competitive advantage, to win your market share and win new customers right there. Very simple. Again, briefly about us, about Creatio. As a vendor of no-code platforms, we are highly recognized by world-leading analysts such as Gartner and Forrester. But what we are really proud of as well is the recognition of the end users, as you see here on the bottom row, that end users give us really high marks on different platforms, meaning that they love the solution, they love the interface, and the adoption rates are also very high. And that, of course, makes us feel real proud about what we are doing. So Gartner and Forrester, of course, and then our customers, right? So we work on a global scale. That actually shows the flexibility of the solution to cover very different and sophisticated requirements, especially when we are talking about banks located in different areas. So we work with major banking groups in Europe, of course, like Raiffeisen, ODP, Societe Generale, BNP Paribas, and so on and so forth. And what's also very important that recently we have released a no-code playbook, which is actually a hands-on guide on how to adopt no-code and use it within your organization to maximize the outcome, right? We had a release event featured by Steve Wozniak, but the book is really worth checking because it gives you like a practical guide on how to use this within your organization and extract maximum value out of it right away. It's available in different forms. You can just go and download it for free from our website, or you can buy it on Amazon. There's also a book available in a physical form or in audio format, which I also love a lot. And then, of course, the key principles of Creatio is one platform, which you have just discussed, freedom to own your automation and to create the applications that your business will be able to benefit. And genuine care means that we give a lot of love and attention, and we are committed to our customers, and we are committed to the joint success together. So thank you very much for the attention and for this opportunity to talk about automation with you today. If you want to check more about Creatio, feel free to do this by using the QR code or visiting our website, or feel free to approach me directly as well. I'll be happy to have this conversation. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you. That was, I think, that was very enthusiastic and visionary. I mean, from my opinion, the presentation. I have a few questions, though. I think a lot of viewers would want to start kind of implementing this kind of solutions and at least thinking about it. So Daniela already mentioned that, and you confirmed that in order to start the automation, you need to first optimize certain processes, right? So what would you suggest? Can you give us maybe a roadmap of the optimizing some processes? What are the key, steps in order to optimize some processes so that they're more, they will be more fit for automation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as I said, and Daniela actually mentioned that in her presentation as well, there are different processes, and all of them might be on a different kind of stage of maturity, right? It depends on the department, it depends on the actual need of the business. There might be something new that we want to build from scratch and we don't have understanding how it works. So first of all, I would recommend to involve people who have like the business knowledge, right? And understanding of how these processes work, right? So if you're thinking about automating these processes, bring those people who are using these processes, right? So subject matter experts, business experts, and combine this with, your technical team, right? Because those people will be responsible for the automation. But general requirement is not to overthink this process, right? Because a lot of organizations, they think they need to reach that perfect storm where they will have everything described, documented, and only after that, it will be a right time to do the automation. Not at all, right? We've seen so many examples where they get stuck in this, planning, paralysis by analysis, right? Spending a lot of time and not bringing any value to the business at the end of the day. Because by the time the processes were formalized, the situation have changed on the market, the expectations and requirements of business have changed. So not overthink, play it agile, right? Bring the experts in, and by mixing it all together, you will definitely get the result. It might not be perfect, but this is one of the key principles, right, of no-code development. So do the iterations, constantly deliver, get the feedback, reiterate, and that at the end of the day, you will receive something that, not at the end of the day, but really quickly, by following this approach, you will receive something that will generate the business value and that will be adopted by the end users.
And I think you correctly mentioned that, some processes might be, the world is moving very fast right now. So, so how do you see that the processes that were, automated, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 5 years ago, it makes sense to automate them right now? Or do you see that any changes? Do you expect any changes in what processes can be automated in general, like in banking industry? Because Daniela mentioned that there's some processes that usually can be automated, like regulatory compliance, like lending processes, and so on. So do you find it to be stay the same or changing in the future?
Okay, so about changing in the future, my favorite question when I talk to leaders of the organization, I always ask, if you talk to me about your organization now and a year back, would you say that everything remained the same? 99% of the cases, the answer is no, right? Things are changing so fast, and there's, change is the only constant. If we're talking about automation, so please define automation, because in my understanding, the switch from manual processes or paper-based processes to digital environment is automation already. And where we can get rid of some papers, where we can get rid of some unnecessary stages where people need to kind of interact or do several iterations instead of just one, just clicking, opening the document, giving a comment, and maybe tagging a person who then needs to give the approval or react somehow to this. That's already an automation, because that accelerates the cycle so much, from several days to maybe, I don't know, an hour or maybe a few hours. And that affects the productivity a lot. And this is something that organization can feel immediately. And that will be already a big impact and improvement for them. So as I'm saying, don't try to boil the ocean overnight, and don't try to overthink this, right? Yeah, there are so many things that can be automated, and they are crying to be automated. So let's start with something very simple. And to do this, again, involve people from business, because they will tell you where they're struggling the most. And then, of course, there should be like a leadership and the appetite for the change. And in combination of that, there is no way you can fail, right? So there will be an outcome.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you for this presentation. Let's hear from other panelists on the same topic. Let's move to the panel discussion right away. Dear viewers, again, if you are interested in any creation products, or if you want to learn more about it, feel free to reach out to Mike directly. Let's move to the panel discussion, which Mike is moderating. We also have Daniela, who presented earlier, and two new faces. Kenan Hrusic, he's the head of retail risk modeling and reporting at Raiffeisen Bank, and Tudor Urseu, he's the director, head of data management at First Bank. So guys, Kenan, Tudor, please just introduce yourself very briefly. Let's start with Kenan, and then I'll give the floor to Mike, who will be moderating the panel.
Okay, so thank you, Peter. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Kenan Hrusic, and I currently work for the last 3 years as head of retail risk and head of retail risk modeling and reporting. And in the past, I have worked in collections department together with retail department in the bank. So I have 10+ years of experience in banking industry.
Thank you very much. Tudor, please.
Hello, Peter. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to share a few thoughts in this panel. My background is roughly almost 20 years of banking experience with several banks here in Romania and consulting industry with Big Four in Ernst & Young. And currently I'm head of data management in First Bank Romania.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Mike, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for the introduction and for joining this discussion. I think we have quite a few topics to discuss today, but the backbone of today's discussion will be automation, right? And I know that I'm very enthusiastic about the automation, but at the same time, it's important to be reasonable, right? And realistically estimate your resources, the efforts, the outcome that you're expecting to get, right? But so this is why I just want to start with the like very general and overarching question here is how to prepare people and processes within the organization for the automation, right? How to set up that proper background just to make sure that we will be doing right things in future, right? And yeah, Daniela, since that was pretty much a topic of your presentation, I would ask you to open this. And then, of course, it will be very interesting to hear, all the experts' opinions.
Thank you, Mike. Very happy to continue this conversation on the panel level, and I think that I believe our participants will hear lots of interesting things here, and of course, would like to see lots of questions in chat. Well, everything starts with the people. I mean, we would like to have some robots within the bank, but even with them, we need very much people around us. And when we are talking about banks, and when I said bank, I always have perspective from my own organization there somewhere. And as I said, we are a retail brick and mortar bank, and dealing with processes at the beginning was something like it's nice to have. That was the first approach. I mean, we will deal with processes when we have time, because we have some more important things to do now. We have some tasks, we have some reports, we have some budgeting, we have some loan approvals, we have something that we don't have time with processes. And then somehow we awake ourselves when we saw that some of our processes, that we lose money somewhere actually, that our clients are not happy with our processes. And something that you mentioned as well, that our employees are not satisfied with our processes. And usually it happens that from sales departments, people start to complain. In our case, it was the fact that, for example, at a certain point of time, we, for example, in 2 years, implemented more than 300 different documents, procedures from ASTE group, from legislative, from EU, and somehow it was a must. Like, you don't want to have gaps on those things. You must be compliant. But we didn't have time to ask the question how to implement that. So we just implemented. It was different workarounds, different Excels, So, we are excellent bank. We are doing everything in Excel. So at certain point of time, our network said, well, are you aware, for example, I'm coming from sales, so those are my favorite examples. Are you aware that we need, for example, 3 hours to prepare the most simple unsecured loan?
Yeah.
Just to gather the paper, not to speak with the client, not to do proper offer, not to sell, but just to gather the papers and to put that in the core system. We need several hours. I will not speak about housing loans or mortgage loan or something like that. And then you are somehow forced, your board and the management, B-1, you're somehow forced to do something with your processes. And when you, I would say it's as well very important to prepare your organizational structure for your strategy. We all have in strategies, I speak now about the banks, we all have operational excellence there somewhere. And we would like to have a best operational model to be very effective in our operations. But we must have organizational structure which corresponds with that. That means that somewhere within the bank, you must have a certain B-1 organization which deals with processes and which upgrades your processes. And then when they have a certain KPI, then they're doing with that something. Then, of course, you must build awareness, you must have support from your board, you must include people from your network to participate actively in project management team. So when you prepare all these steps and when you make that kind of beginning awareness, it starts going. But first thing first, you must prepare somehow people in order not to have a failure on the first process that you want to, for example, put on DMS or on the RPA. And maybe one more example, we did something with artificial intelligence in our bank. And we were, sales departments were not so fast to do that. We were overwhelmed with some other processes. But for example, our payment processing department, they did a great project on artificial intelligence, and they are now very, very happy with that. And now they are very much volunteering in those processes. So their employees, when they saw the concrete benefits, now you don't need to push them to do something. We have a pull strategy, like they're actually now pushing us from the management to do the next project. And then it goes much and much faster and better, and with far more success.
That's clear. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So the strong leadership and understanding of what needs to be done, and then, starting with something small, but which can bring a lot of benefits to the business right there on the way, is important. Just with your example of the simple process that took so much time, and I bet after the automation, the productivity improved significantly. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
Yes, indeed. If I may add, Mike,
please,
on that, as we all know and we all use this phrase, time is money. I think automation is all about getting the proper service out there, getting the proper customer satisfaction, reducing the time to market. Either it's a new product, either it's a service, either it's a settlement file that we need to process, either it's a payment file, either it's a transfer. Any of these, if we want to achieve a particular time frame and we want to reduce that and be as quick as possible, we have to have automation. I remember maybe 20 years ago, we used to process the settlement files among the banks manually via manual process and manual transfers. Now we use crons and we use automation. The data lineage is different, and the basic foundation of any process, it's the time to market and the time that we improve in order to provide a quality service or a product, either internally, either externally towards the customers.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so if I may add, Mike, as well.
Please.
So I think it's also important, like I think the colleagues already said a lot of things, but let me maybe rephrase it or summarize it like this. Like, it's important to identify areas that can benefit from automation, like determine which processes and tasks can be automated, whether are those quick wins which can be done within the one department, or we need multiple departments that will be much harder to implement. And for example, if you have certain reports which are distributed each month, as Daniela mentioned in her presentation, you can benefit with automating that. So it's really important to just put on paper everything that we do and which can benefit actually from automation. Not everything can have benefit with the automation. And the second point which I want to say, and I think all the colleagues also mentioned it, is communication with employees. I think that's the very important part of the automation process. It's important that colleagues know that real reasons for the automation, how will it affect their jobs, and maybe some new skills that they will have to learn because they will start working on something else which isn't actually the job that they did so far. So that's it, basically. Most of the other things colleagues already mentioned.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I also think that makes a lot of sense. So prioritize things properly and then think about the adoption and maybe build the adoption strategy where you have to maybe start with teasing and telling your employees that something big is coming, right? And then unveiling, parts of this gradually, and then keeping the power users, I mean, the people from that area involved into the development. So just to make sure that it will be relevant for them, and they can actually be partners who communicate things both ways, right? Collecting the feedback from the business users, and after kind of digesting and transforming this within the technical team, giving it back to those end users, saying, hey, you were complaining about that, or you were talking about these things which caused some issues, and now we worked on this, and this is what you will be getting very soon. So get ready for that. Soon that will be released, and that kind of drives it within the organization and creates the right expectations. Yeah, absolutely agree. And I've seen those approaches, working and proving themselves as very effective on the organizational level. Okay, that actually brings us gradually to another topic which I wanted to touch here, right? So we are very eager when we're talking about automation. Clearly, there are a lot of benefits of it, but what are the potential challenges or pitfalls that organizations can kind of face or encounter on this path, right? So you have to be reasonable and you have to be prepared, right? And this is what provokes that question, because obviously, especially on the leadership level, there is a risk evaluation, right? And choosing the right moment to go into this, right? So what would be the cautions and like the issues that's worth mentioning and talking about?
Okay, so maybe I can start.
Yeah, please continue.
It's really connected with the previous statement that I did. So I think the first mention here is resistance to the change. Employees will probably resist to the change that automation brings. It's not only that. We as a people are like that. We don't like changes. We are used to some things, some processes, and I think this is very big issue when we talk about the automation, resistance to change from the employees actually. The second point which I want to address is already what you said, Mike. It's these legacy systems which most of the companies, not just banks, but I think most of the bigger companies have these legacy systems which is a little bit trickier to integrate all these automations, all these tools with those legacy systems. And then, of course, there's this side of costs, which Daniela also mentioned, like this cost to income ratio. Automation can be really expensive if we are talking about RPA, and solution can be really expensive. I believe it's paid by a license, and these licenses can be very expensive. So it's very important if we decide to go in this process of automation, we need to make a certain assessment or to see the cost benefit, actually to see the benefit of that automation. And from my point of view, maybe major thing, when I say my point of view from the risk side, is regulator or the regulations. So all these automations, everything that is done within the banks, especially risk department, is pretty much regulated by the local regulators, group regulators.
Right.
And definitely that is something that has to be taken into account.
Of course. Yeah, thank you for that.
If I may add on that, and
Please.
it's a very good point. The national authorities, the regulators, may add additional challenges on what we're trying to do and what we're trying to automate, and especially when we have a long-running project. Because when we have a long-running project like 1.5 years, 2 years, 5 years, we know the strategy, we know where we need to go, we know what we want to automate, and we know what we want to come out with as a result. But meanwhile, the foundation changes, because the regulator says, now you need to do, I don't know, daily reporting on various new customers or daily DPDs or that are being transferred to national authorities, or maybe we need to change how we look at the PDs, the probability of defaults, or maybe different factors or variations. From my perspective, one of the challenges that we came across when building automation, and I'm not referring necessarily to high-level automation like RPA, robot process automation, or no code, because these are also automations but are high-level automations. I'm referring to low-level automation, like the automating of data transfers among the systems in order to have centralized information to be spread for self-servicing. You're saying, Hanan, regarding automating a report. My vision is not to automate the report, but my vision is to make the data readily available for you to consume however you would want it. So would be not an effort to schedule the report, but you will have access to it. You could self-service, you could deep dive. If you want to add another dimension on which to filter out the potential customers that may be at high risk or lower risk for you, you could do that by yourselves. And when you're conducting such a long-running project, like automating any source of data within an organization, as we all know, banks are huge organizations, when the regulator comes, then they add an extra challenge on that, because the teams are already involved, and we have some slightly moving target towards we need to work faster and harder in order to achieve it in the initial planned scope, budget, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, thank you for that. Oh, of course, those things cannot be neglected. Daniela, do you want to add something to this?
Just shortly, I mean, colleagues mentioned lots of important things concerning the challenges, but I will just come back again to our examples. I mean, for my organization, we are, again, pioneers in the automation. And I believe that when you start something in the bank, don't try to be big bank, because banks are very sensitive to that. So try to do processes which are, as I said, ready, not complicated. I completely agree with everything that Tudor and Kenan said. For example, at a certain point of time, when we tried to candidate processes for automation, we have a big problems with reading of reports from a land registry in Montenegro. And it's very time consuming. And we believe that it can be put on one part on DMS and the other part can be automated. But at the end, we realized that we cannot rely on web services on the side of the land registry office, because they are not always up to date. They have some problems. And it was luck that we didn't start with that process. We recognized that at the beginning. And then we realized that it's better to start with some more simple processes, with minor processes, and to do that small improvements in order to prepare the bank for maybe one big bang at a certain point of time when we are ready. So it's very important when we said, yes, we are doing RPA, we are doing automation. Don't start with big bang, because banks are not organizations which are very comfortable with a huge level of risks concentrated on certain projects. So I would suggest something like that. Try and choose clever. And maybe another point, in our case, we always had a problem with resources on IT side. But those automations, which are like simple ones, we did with internal resources. So with people from our organizations who know our processes. And we already recognize that for Big Bang, in terms of one very great achievement, we will need external vendor, definitely. But from our side, we will have experienced people who will be part of the project management team. So that will be maybe an example from the concrete case.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the practical examples, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think all of this is very relevant for the audience that we're having here today, right? Because it kind of gives the expert view and the real-time, real-life examples of what should be considered during the those big transformation initiatives on the organizational level. But there's one topic that's been on the table for quite a while. It's quite sensitive, I would say, right? This is why I think it's worth stressing it today during our discussion as well. And it's like the ethical considerations of automation of financial decision making, meaning that there is a certain portion of human involvement and the manpower which is involved in the decision making, and then the outcome of the decision making for the end users, right? So it affects the customer experience, the decisions that we make, the retention, and so on and so forth, but also people who are actually participating in the process of it, right? So were you thinking about this? And if not, what are your thoughts on this topic? Because as I said, it has appeared and it's been discussed quite actively, the last days. So Daniela, do you want to continue? So.
Just to unmute myself, yes. Well, I've just started. Maybe colleagues can of course interrupt me. When we're speaking about data and usage of data, I mean, we always must consider and be very careful with the sources of those data, and do we have consent of our clients? Do we have a clear purposes? Are we GDPR compliant? I mean, the story of the GDPR is actually something we just started in Montenegro, and actually still is not in the whole scope adopted. But if we just speak here about automation, from the perspective of the employees and from the perspective of our clients, if it's used properly, it is 100% ethical. I mean, if your goal is to improve and to make easier life of your employees and to prepare them for more complex tasks, to free up their time to work on their education, to upgrade themselves, then it's very ethical in terms of relationship between employer and employee. And on the other side, if you're doing something which will positively impact your customers, then 100% it's ethical. Of course, you must be very transparent in usage of customers' data, and it's not something which is connected just with the automation. It's something which is a standard of banking business. So be transparent and just give your clients a possibility to say, I wouldn't like for my personal data to be processed at certain level. I mean, just a minimum or for certain purposes. So I would say that idea, if it's within the strategy properly implemented, it's very ethical and should be implemented as let's say crucial pillar in order to make a working environment more human for employees, and of course to contribute to client experience as much as possible.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Kenan, do you have something to add, maybe from the risk standpoint, and since you've been
Yes.
deeply involved into this topic?
Yes, definitely. What first thing that comes to my mind is transparency. So these automated system must be transparent and explainable, so that all these decisions that we do, that we make, can be audited, whether by internal audit or local regulator or whoever, external auditor, whoever. So we need to make this a very transparent approach, and definitely that's something that has to be done. Second point, which I would like to say, is human oversight. So there has to be someone, department person, who is responsible, who will be designated to check that these automated systems or processes and decisions coming from that are reviewed and corrected if needed. And maybe definitely when we talk about the errors that can come up with this automated financial decision making, we need to ensure that we detect and correct errors appropriately in the course of this automation process. So those are the main principles which I would like to point out when we are talking about the ethical considerations: transparency, human oversight, and also checking the errors and making sure that we learn on those mistakes and correct them in the future.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. Tudor.
Yeah, I agree with what Daniela and Kenan said. And I think in the banking industry, as it is a highly regulated industry, everything is conducted ethically from all the perspectives. We are GDPR compliant, we are aware of PII data, we are aware of any implications that may have if we trigger a flag on a particular customer, that the customer may be having a debt that is not being repaid, or as a being with a certain delay in repayments or in installments or in equity or whatever. From my perspective, as Kenan said, the process, once it's being analyzed, the process also needs to keep a certain percentage of human intervention in it, or at least of human observation of spread, maybe in 6 months, 12 months, or maybe longer, to analyze and to see if the process backfires or misfires in any way, because there are very high implications in the financial industries. But we all rely on these processes, and the processes automation started tens of years ago, where, as I told you, we're back in the days where processing settlement files by manually. Now we're using machines, we're using cron, we're using very powerful systems. And regarding automation, of course it is ethically. You can have a very easy example, maybe optical character recognition, OCR. From my perspective, anything that has to do with this OCR process and automating a process that reads automatically the papers of the customers, or what we receive via emails, or what we have as scans, it helps the bank making the process leaner, making the process faster, and it has a very low error rate. I think the OCR processes right now have, I don't know, less than 3% errors in what they do, and that helps in getting products faster to the customer. If the customer says, I'll apply for a loan and I want a mortgage loan, and here are the evaluation of my collateral, I'm sending you via email. We could process very fast the email document. We could extract the relevant information from the document, like the value of the property. We could add the internal haircut or on top of that. Hanan, you're familiar with the risk methodologies on that, and we can provide a faster answer to the customer. So from my perspective, automation, because banking at least is very highly regulated industry, and we have a lot of authorities that are checking and cross-checking, and we're also taking care that all the process are in place. I think it's ethically used from any point of view. And also I'm curious to see how ChatGPT will going to impact the industry. Maybe I don't know, from call center perspective or from customer education in finance and in other industries. But I'm sure that these new technology that appear right now are going to be regulated and are going to be used in the near future also in banking industries.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think that's also very exciting to kind of look after some emerging technology these days and how they are going to transform the industry, right? And this is why we are so excited about no code as well. All right. I think there was one more question. Conscious of time, Pete, I hope we have a little bit more time to talk about one important thing, also related to automation. It's like internal versus external automation, right? There are different types of processes, a variety of them, and variety of areas where it can, impact the business in one way or another, right? So when we are talking internal processes, clearly there is also a huge demand for automation, but then there is like an external process which are related to our customers, right? Customer facing and so on and so forth, which are on the forefront of the business, right? So how to prioritize, how to kind of differentiate, and does it really make any difference, right? So really interesting to hear the expert's opinion on this topic. So Daniela, maybe you can just kick it in.
There was one short slide on my presentation. I mean, you must have some kind of criteria predefined when you are categorizing your processes and deciding what to do with them. When people feel that they have direct benefits from this kind of story, and we are now in that case, then we have another problem, not how to motivate them, but how to explain them that we cannot automate everything in this year. I mean, I'm now speaking of those hundreds of small processes when now they see that they have direct benefits from that, in terms that you will free up, for example, half an hour or 45 minutes every day to one employee on some kind of very boring report, which can be easily automated. And then we stuck to that transparency in governance of processes, which is as well very important because of some kind of internal organizational culture. And we set up a kind of criteria which are directly connected with our strategy on one part, and on the other part with the operational efficiency, with the volume of the process, and with the FTs that we spend there in general. And of course, we always put there something which is connected with compliance and the implementation of something that is a must-have. And then we just put like criteria from, I don't know, 1 to 5, and explain which of these criteria applied to which process, in which degree, and that kind we are adopting some kind of score to each process. What importance and what strategy importance we can connect with that process. And then we have some kind of mutual understanding and support within departments, how to categorize and what will be our priorities in implementation. And maybe just one additional comment on something that we previously actually finished with. Yes, I would agree that automated processes must be governed and must be somehow controlled. We had an example of pre-approved loans, for example, within the group, and that process contained lots of automation on the side of the risk knockout criteria, on the side of publishing of that on different channels, on branch channel, on call center channel, on m-banking channel. And experience was that you must somehow cut that process to have a certain stages where you will make some controls. So when you finish with the processing of data from your data warehouse, and then you apply all the risk criteria, someone from your strategy department or risk department must check that. I mean, just quickly to see what's going on there. And then you continue with the process. Because some processes which are automated, I mean, you always have some kind of risks there, particularly if they are subject to client experience, or even if they're strongly regulated, like they are under the central bank regulations or some other. So even if it's automated, be careful and make some control points somewhere. So it was actually the comment and example on the previous topic.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So Canon, do you want to continue?
Yes. Okay. So this is a really tough question. On the one side, you have customers, which basically the bank is working for the customers, and on the other side, you have back offices on which we can significantly improve or reduce costs and possibility of errors or something like that. So when we talk about what will have higher priority, it's very hard to say. So I think that there has to be some two streams, like one working for clients, like lending stream, and the other back office stream.
All right.
So when we talk about the return to investment or return on investment, I think that back office can greatly benefit for the banks, because with this process, with automation, we can improve efficiency, reduce costs, eliminate a lot of errors that are manually now maybe happen in the back office. So from that side of story, I think this will be a great benefit for the banks. And from the other side, for the clients, they will have their interaction with the bank will be much better, because they will have better service. Maybe some errors that are found, it will create like improved efficiency towards clients and reduce possibility of errors that have been identified in the past. So basically, that's it on this topic from my side.
Can I pop up, Kevin?
Please.
Well, we had a very interesting discussion with one of my very experienced colleagues from the back office, who actually B-1 for processing department. And there is no like opposite direction of the back office interests and client interests. And if you try to, I mean, client stream or sales stream, if you succeed to optimize something in the back offices at certain point, that definitely would be a benefit for the client.
Yes.
At least you will
free
indirectly. Yeah. At least you will free up some resources from some other things, and they will be quicker and better to support sales in some other tasks. So yes, within the sales department, we are sometimes too much client oriented, and maybe we do not see that some back office processes are as well in our interests to be automated and to be faster, in order to free up some people there to work something which is more complex and maybe more important for us. So yes, of course, I strongly support for back office processes to be sometimes even of a bigger priority than direct sales channels.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful example. Yeah, streamlining the process makes sense. Tudor, would you like to contribute from your side as well?
Yes, if I may, I would add on the same topic that Daniela, on the same line that Daniela started. From my perspective, not necessarily once you look at the process, not necessarily you look for the processes that can have the higher cost associated. From my perspective, is the process needs to be analyzed from several dimensions. Is it a regulatory process that needs to be automated? Is it something that impacts the productivity? Is it something that impacts the business plan? And several other dimensions. You don't necessarily have to look at a process that at the end of the day, if you automated it, you would free up some FTEs, because the FTEs at the end of the day, you'll just be reusing them because the activities will get, from my perspective, more complex, and over time it will have to involve we will have to involve as various organizations more or less the same baseline of employees, but in much more complex processes, because the regulators come with new challenges, the market comes with new challenges, the demand for a product that is being released faster, sooner, better, more pink or beautiful product than the previous one, and all these challenges add up. I agree, the automation of processes can improve the productivity, regardless if it's back end or back office or automated or I don't know, optical character recognition, OCR, or maybe an RPA that introduces from the OCR that was just read by the printer, introduces the customer data into the CRM, or maybe the CRM back in the back triggers an risk management process that automates an AML, maybe an anti-money laundering check to see if the customer is on the blacklist, or maybe if the customer is not on the blacklist and the customer has a longer relations with the bank, and the customer had applied previously to a loan that was declined due to various conditions, and the conditions change, maybe it triggers a call center lead, and all these relate, and all this can be automated, and not necessarily FTE cut down, but making the process streamer, looking towards the market to see what we can offer there, faster, better, or maybe compliant with a new regulation, or maybe, I don't know, working as a total industry connected and serving the customer as a marketplace. Normal.
Yeah.
This is my perspective on automated processes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Tudor, Daniela, Kenan, I think we are at the end of the discussion for today, and I really appreciate you kind of sharing your expertise here and giving these insights, which hopefully will encourage people from our audience today to kind of drive these transformational initiatives and automation within their organization. So yeah, I think we discussed the most important topics which we planned for today. If we have any questions from the audience, happy to answer them. And yeah, Peter, over to you. Thanks everyone once again.
Thank you very much, Mike. We're slightly over time. We don't have any questions, but anyway, I think the discussion and the webinar was really interesting, very dynamic, and I think there was a lot of interesting ideas. So Mike, Kenan, Daniela, Tudor, thank you all very much for participation.
Thank you.
Also, thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you,
Looking forward to speaking again.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And just a few words from my side, dear viewers. So yes, we're done with the webinar. That was very interesting and a lot of interesting ideas discussed. Of course, One last thing I wanted to mention is our next event within the Banking CEE network is the Lending CEE Summit, which is scheduled for 24th of March. So you can find more information on our website, connectiva-ce.com, and you can just check this section with the upcoming events. So thank you all for connecting. We really hope that you enjoyed the webinar, and I hope to see you all next time. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.